The biodiversity of tide pools. Tide pools are one of nature's most fascinating microhabitats, teeming with an incredible variety of life. Found along rocky coastlines, these small pools of seawater are left behind when the tide recedes. They serve as temporary homes for a diverse range of marine creatures, from tiny algae to colorful sea stars and scuttling crabs. Despite their small size, tide pools are rich ecosystems where creatures must adapt to constantly changing conditions. Let's dive into the world of tide pools and discover the amazing biodiversity hidden within them. What are tide pools? Tide pools are shallow pools of seawater that form in rocky coastal areas during low tide. They exist in the intertidal zone, the area between high and low tide, where the ocean meets the land. Water wave characteristics of tide pools. White heavy checkmark water is trapped in rock depressions as the tide goes out. White heavy checkmark conditions constantly change, with shifting temperatures, salinity, and oxygen levels. White heavy checkmark marine life must be tough, as organisms face strong waves, drying sun, and predators. Tide pools provide safe shelters for many small sea creatures while also acting as nurseries for some marine species. The different zones of a tide pool. Not all tide pools are the same. The intertidal zone is divided into 3 sections, each with different environmental conditions and species. Water wave high tide zone, upper intertidal. Exposed to air for long periods. Few creatures live here due to drying out, desiccation. Common species, barnacles, limpets, periwinkle snails. Water wave mid-tide zone, middle intertidal. Covered and uncovered by water twice a day. More species diversity, as creatures have short exposure to air. Common species, mussels, sea anemones, sea stars, crabs. Water wave low tide zone, lower intertidal. Underwater most of the time except during the lowest tides. The most biodiversity, similar to the open ocean. Common species, sea urchins, small fish, octopuses, sponges. The closer to the ocean, the more species a tide pool can support. Incredible biodiversity of tide pools. Tide pools are full of unique and resilient creatures, each adapted to the harsh and changing conditions of the intertidal zone. Spiral shell mollusks, shell-sheltered survivors. Mollusks are soft-bodied animals that often have hard shells for protection. Snail limpets use a muscular foot to cling to rocks. Spiral shell periwinkle snails can survive out of water by sealing their shells. Oyster mussels, attached to rocks in clusters to withstand waves. Many mollusks are filter feeders, helping to keep tide pools clean. Crab crustaceans, the scavengers of the tide pool. Crustaceans have hard exoskeletons and multiple legs for movement. Crabs move sideways and hide under rocks. Lobster barnacles, attached to rocks permanently and feed with tiny legs. Shrimp hide in seaweed and eat tiny plankton. Crustaceans play a key role in the tide pool food web, eating waste and keeping the ecosystem healthy. Fish, quick swimmers in small pools. Some small fish get trapped in tide pools when the tide goes out, using them as temporary homes. Tropical fish goby fish can survive in very shallow water. Fish blennies have large eyes and hop between pools. Blowfish sculpins, camouflaged fish that blend into rocks. Fish must avoid predators like birds and larger sea creatures. Squid octopuses and sea stars, the smart hunters. Some of the most fascinating tide pool creatures are octopuses and sea stars, which are intelligent predators. Octopuses, masters of disguise that squeeze into tiny spaces. White medium-star sea stars, can regrow lost arms and use tube feet to move. Squid, juveniles, sometimes get trapped in tide pools during storms. These animals show amazing adaptations to survive in a small but dynamic world. Microbe algae and seaweed, the oxygen producers. Algae and seaweed are the base of the food chain, providing oxygen and food. Herb green algae, found in shallow water, eaten by snails and fish. Water wave brown kelp, forms underwater forests that shelter animals. Fallen leaf red algae, can survive deeper in the water. Without seaweed and algae, tide pool ecosystems would collapse. How tide pool creatures survive. Living in a tide pool is tough. Creatures must face big waves, drying out, and predators. Small blue diamond clinging to rocks, barnacles, mussels, and limpets stick to surfaces. Small blue diamond hiding underwater, fish, crabs, and octopuses avoid drying out. Small blue diamond hard shells and thick skin, many animals have protection against rough waves. Small blue diamond camouflage, sea stars and crabs blend into rocks to escape predators. Tide pool creatures have evolved amazing survival strategies to handle these extreme conditions. The importance of tide pools. Tide pools support marine life and provide opportunities for scientific study and education. White heavy checkmark nurseries for young sea creatures like fish and crabs. White heavy checkmark natural water filters, keeping ocean water clean. White heavy checkmark research sites for marine biology and climate change studies. Tide pools connect land and sea, offering a glimpse into ocean ecosystems without diving deep underwater. Threats to tide pool ecosystems. Unfortunately, tide pools are fragile and face several threats. Globe showing America's climate change, rising temperatures and ocean acidification affect marine life. Footprints human impact, too much foot traffic can harm delicate organisms. Oil drum pollution, plastic waste and oil spills damage tide pool ecosystems. To protect tide pools, visitors should avoid touching animals, never take anything home, and reduce plastic waste. Conclusion: a small world full of wonders. Tide pools may be small, but they hold a vast and diverse world of life. From tiny snails to clever octopuses, the creatures that live here demonstrate resilience and adaptability.